Time. Timers may be the most universal regulation among combat sports. No shit, Sherlock, get to the point. Using time to formulate a strategy in boxing is not uncommon, but we as the viewers sometimes need to take into account the fact that championship fights are 12 3-minute rounds, and fighters can formulate strategies around this to ensure they win more rounds than their opponent by the end of the fight. Since we're going to be focusing on strategies in this video, this brings me to my first point, which is Vasyl Lomachenko's strategy to be as conservative as possible in the first half of the fight. If you've watched the post-fight interviews on ESPN, you might hear about how Teofimo Lopez neutralized Lomachenko, which I'll get into later, but this also seemed like a deliberately executed strategy from Lomachenko, and if you just thought to yourself I'm a degenerate fanboy after hearing me say that, then... But right from the start of the fight, Lomachenko was moving backwards and circling the ring with a tight guard in hopes of stepping on the gas in the second half of the fight to take Lopez into deep waters. This strategy was all but confirmed when Vasyl's father was telling him in the corner between rounds to continue taking his time and that everything was going according to plan. This of course backfired as we saw in the fight, because this strategy doesn't typically work against world championship boxers. A champion like Lopez isn't just going to empty his gas tank and fall for the bait, so you can't afford to just give away so many rounds, so many crucial rounds at the start of the fight. Now don't get me wrong, Teofimo Lopez did win these early rounds by earning them with smart strategy. So what strategy did Teofimo Lopez have to ensure he won these early rounds? A disciplined approach with his jab was key. Lopez used his jab to the lead hand of Lomachenko to check his lead hand and hold him in place. Jabbing to the lead hand in the Southpaw versus Orthodox matchup is a useful tool, because it also makes it much harder for your opponent to counter you for this, since you'd be jabbing from further away than if you were aiming further ahead. We see that this was a strategy employed by Floyd Mayweather in his fight with Manny Pacquiao, which was also a Southpaw versus Orthodox matchup. As you can see, Mayweather was able to maintain control of the distance by jabbing the lead hand, making Pacquiao reset. This was a smart tactic by Lopez, and once this jab was able to get Lomachenko to sit still long enough, it allowed him to set up punches intended to land. And jabbing to the lead hand of your southpaw opponent also makes it more difficult for them to slip to the outside of your jab and counter you the way Manny Pacquiao loves to do, when the jab is aimed at his head.
And Lomachenko with two big punches.
If Lomachenko was going to successfully pull off the strategy of starting as conservative as possible, he still needed to ensure he won these early rounds by landing punches.
No shit, Sherlock.
And if you want to emulate this strategy and make me get another prediction horribly wrong when I pick you, we see how Lomachenko could have tweaked this strategy by taking a look at Manny Pacquiao's third fight with Erik Morales. Pacquiao, while patiently waiting on the outside, would bait out the attack from Morales and step out of range just enough to be able to come back with a counter. Pacquiao, as a fighter, almost always smaller than his opponents, has done this time and time again. Lomachenko would step out of the range with the purpose of avoiding the punches and nothing else, preventing him from being able to counter and give himself a chance to win rounds. Another reason I think this strategy from Lomachenko was more of an intentional choice of game plan rather than being a factor of Lopez's game plan is because when Lomachenko decided to turn it up in the second half of the fight, he did so at will and was met with very little resistance. Pressure is the name of the game for Lomachenko, everyone knows this. His style as a counter-punching pressure fighter is to put you in the matrix by establishing advantageous angles, but these angles are mainly achieved when your opponent is either punching at you or standing like a statue.
Stuck in the mud almost.
So Lomachenko uses pressure and a slew of tricks to bait out punches so that he could counter and angle off on his opponents. So for example, Lomachenko's forward pressure baits Lopez to throw a jab at him here. So you see Lopez throws the jab and Lomachenko counters with a 1-2-1 combination. But right here in the next section, he throws a jab again, and this makes Lopez think he's going to throw the 1-2-1 combination again. Lopez ducks to avoid the combination that simply isn't coming. So instead of committing to the combo and allowing Lopez to smother him, Lomachenko uses the opportunity to establish the outside angle by stepping around. And there you see him land a left hand. This is almost the same trick he used on Nicholas Walters, where he uses a combination and then does it again to make his opponent think he's going to do it again. So he steps around when his opponent reacts to it, and this sets up an angle that he can land the left hand. And here's another example of Lomachenko setting up an angle on Teofimo Lopez. So we notice that Lomachenko steps to the inside angle as he fires a combination, essentially squaring himself up to Lopez. Since Lomachenko is the one who established this position, Lopez is the one who needs to adjust his position in order to escape here. And you see as Lopez swings his rear foot around to unsquare himself up, Lomachenko uses this opportunity to step around Lopez's lead foot to establish the dominant outside angle so he can line up this straight left hand. And this is almost the exact same setup he used to Gamaliel Rodriguez, where Lomachenko stepped to the inside suddenly to square himself up to Rodriguez, and as Rodriguez fixed the position, Lomachenko took that time to step onto the outside angle to set up this attack. So remember when I said Lomachenko turned it up in the second half of the fight with very little resistance from Lopez? Well, that wasn't entirely true. Teofimo Lopez smartly recognized Lomachenko's strategy and weathered the storm with this last strategy. Lopez came prepared for the attacks of Lomachenko. The key to escaping the matrix-like angles he establishes is to immediately fix the angle with your footwork so he can't tee off on you. So many of Lomachenko's opponents either shell up or even worse, turn to face him when he does this. But Lopez had the awareness to fix the angle to mitigate the damage when Lomachenko turned it up. When fighting Lomachenko, it's nearly impossible to prevent him from establishing an advantageous angle on you for the entire fight. He's eventually going to establish one, but you must be prepared to fix the angle whenever it does happen to mitigate the damage he could do to you. So let's take the fight between Nonito Donaire and Rigondeaux as an example. Here we see Donaire establishes the outside angle behind a double jab, and we see that Rigondeaux ducks to avoid the jab and the potential right hand that could come, but he's in a very disadvantageous position right now. So we see that Rigondeaux fixes the angle by swinging his rear foot around to essentially swap places with Donaire. He also creates distance to make sure he can't be hit while he does this, and this is how he fixes the angle. And just like Rigondeaux, here you see the outside angle get established on Lopez, and Lopez responds by immediately stepping his rear foot to the space that Lomachenko was just at. And instead of giving up ground like Rigondeaux, Lopez creates space by pushing Lomachenko away to remain defensively responsible. Lopez was also so prepared for Lomachenko's angles that he began to counter with the right hand whenever Lomachenko tried to step to the outside angle. This greatly reduced the amount of times Lomachenko could get his offense going when he turned it up in the second half of the fight.
I have to close that distance.
He's closing.
Try to make up the ground.
Right hand by Lopez. Straight right hand moments ago. Looking for that right uppercut.
So as you see, Lomachenko tries to establish the outside angle, and Lopez counters him with a right hand. Again, you see Lomachenko try to establish the outside angle, and Lopez shoots the right hand. It doesn't do damage, but you see that it resets the position, doesn't allow Lomachenko to get any offense going. And again, you see Lomachenko step to the outside, Lopez immediately counters him and stops him from getting any offense going from the outside angle. And just like Teofimo Lopez, Guillermo Rigondeaux also shows us that this strategy works, as he shoots his straight left hand to prevent Nonito Donaire from getting the outside angle on him. And just like that, once again, I was dead wrong with my prediction. I was surprised that Lomachenko was backing up for the entire first half of the fight, then suddenly turned on a switch in the 8th round to start fighting like himself again. My guess as to why he chose to do this was because he knew he couldn't turn up the gas for all 12 rounds, so he conserved his energy for the second half of the fight. This seemed evident with how much he slowed down in the 12th round. Following this strategy would mean time was not on Lomachenko's side, and it also banks on having Lopez gas himself out, which is a recipe for failure. Lopez's patience and discipline got him to sweep the first half of the fight and weather the storm in the second half of the fight to be able to come back strong in the 12th round and walk away with the victory. So that's going to do it for this one. If you like the content, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and I'll see you guys all in the next one. Thank you all for watching.